Welcome back to the Scoop here on the VET S.O.S podcast. Remember, you do not have to drown in the sea of transition. Grab that VET S.O.S Lifeline. We are here to help. And continuing on with the military effect. Y'all want to know what that is? Man, this is a phenomenal campaign has been put together by my good friend, Scott Mathorn. He reached out to a lot of organizations. And he also written a book, The Military Effect, that has over 30 to 50 veterans that he spoke to individually to put inside the book. And then he reached out to some organizations and companies like, hey, do you want to be a part of this campaign? But we have one that said yes. And he's here to share what Chris and his team is bringing to the Military Effect campaign table. Chris is a proud Folds of Honor Scholarship recipient and an active member of the Folds of Honor Speakers Bureau. He's dedicated much of his career to supporting Folds of Honor. He also played a vital and pivotal role in launching the Folds of Honor Nevada chapter, working alongside his mother to establish its presence as the 33rd chapter within the organization. As a current Gulf Regional Impact Officer for Folds of Honor, Chris has helped raise funds and awareness for families of the fallen and disabled service members on and off the golf course. His work reflects deep commitment to family, legacy, patriotism, and turning grief into community-powered impact. That's just a little bit about Chris. I got the scoop on him before he came here, and I said, hey, brother, when I hit record, I need you to, we're going to fire for effect. So, Chris, what's going on, brother? How's everything going in the old Nevada? It's nice and it looks like it's sunny. The sun's about to go down. It's probably nice and warm over there, I bet. How's that Nevada air?
It is a beautiful day today. We're in the heart of Las Vegas right now, and you could still kind of wear shorts outside, and we're almost in the middle of December now, so that's a huge blessing in itself.
Yeah, man. So I really want to say thank you for what you're doing. One, for the Military Effect campaign. Two, for your dad's legacy. Three, for your family's legacy. Four, for the Folds of Honor. I could go on and on, but before I continue, I want you to chime in to give the audience and the listeners the scoop on Chris.
So I was born and raised in a military family. My dad was a chief master sergeant in the Air Force. Went in at 17 years old, and then the Air Force is pretty much all he knew after that. But I grew up the typical military lifestyle. We lived on the Air Force base. My dad would deploy for 9 months and then come home for 11 months. And then next year he would, deploy for 11 months, come home for 9. And he did 7 combat tours, retired after 30 years. And on his last deployment, he was in a pretty bad car bomb and had some tough experiences on this deployment that left him 100% service disabled. And he came back from this deployment a lot different than who he was before that. And he was ultimately diagnosed with severe post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury. And in November 2016, he succumbed to these injuries, and the cause of death was a post-traumatic seizure that resulted essentially in a heart attack. It was like a bad dream in his sleep. 52 years old, relatively healthy guy. Drink a lot of beer, but I say put a man in war for 30 years. He's going to probably end up drinking some beer.
Right.
Loved a cold Bud Light, but it was the time of his death was just a year before I went off to college. So I sat with my mom, and we just addressed the big question was, is college even going to be, a thing? I thought maybe I would just have to start working. Now I'm the man of the house. I got to take care of my mom, take care of my brothers, but she's like, you know what, buddy, we're going to figure it out. We're going to make it work. Like, no matter what, we're going to figure it out. So we just sat together and we're pulling all this scholarship information, and we're thinking, okay, well, college is expensive. We're not naive to that. And we learned about folds of honor, and at that time, folds of honor stepped in the shoes of my dad and gave me the grant that I needed to be able to go to school. And I have the hardest working mother in the world, and I thank God every single day for her. But folds of honor was really the key resource that I needed to actually be able to go to school. I pursued a debt free education. I lived a normal collegiate life. No financial struggles because of this grant that I got from Folds of Honor. And I just told my dad's story. I talked about his service, talked about his legacy, his impact in the military, his impact on me as his son. And ultimately that's what sent me to college. So when I was in school, Folds of Honor reached out to me and they said, "Hey, we want to obviously we're going to give you the grant that you need to go to school, but we want to give you a job." And so they invited me to be part of their National Speakers Bureau when I was in college. And they said, "You know what? We want you to tell that exact story." So word for word, what I wrote on
Wow.
my scholarship application was the story that I was telling around the country at different fundraiser events and things like that. And then when I graduated school, there was a job opening on their national golf operations team. And I'm like, man, I'm not qualified for that. I'm just, little old me, scholarship recipient. And I remember seeing 140 applicants that applied for the job, and I somehow got it. And I still feel like this is, I'm in a dream job situation. I believe that, you don't need to wear a uniform to serve. And it's through Folds of Honor how I choose to serve, serving the families and, keeping my dad's legacy alive. So kind of a full circle moment.
Right. No, that's good because you talk about legacy, right? So, your dad, he did 30 years. He was part of the Red Horse community. So, for our listeners and our viewers out there, Red Horse is a specialized unit in the Air Force where you have a lot of different career fields come together as one, and they will go into a bare base situation with nothing around, and they'll build that thing up in like 3 days. They'll have a full running city with water, everything. And every unit, they're self-sustained, self-sufficient. So wherever they could be dropped in the middle of nowhere, and within days they will have it up and running for everybody else to follow on to come in. So that was his dad was part of that as a explosive ordnance disposal technician, professional. And Chris, one of my first questions to you is, your family has a long legacy, long line, 30 years in the Air Force. You've been around the military literally all your life. So what shaped the journey of you transition to Folds of Honor? Because really salute to that organization for stepping up and stepping in.
Yep.
And now you're paying it forward by being part of their son. They said, "Well, I'm not qualified for that," but they seen something in you. And they said, "We want you in this position." So how did that shape your journey into being part of the Folds of Honor community?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, growing up, I thought the military was going to be my path, and
Mm,
I obviously looked up to my dad. I'm like, I was even talking about commissioning as an officer after college, and I wanted to be in the military. I didn't not necessarily the Air Force. I love the Air Force. That's what I was kind of hoping for, but any branch. I just wanted to serve. I wanted
right.
to go that route. Um, then seeing what it did to my dad, and especially before he lost his life, and seeing the PTSD and the traumatic brain injury, and like really the effects of war eat him up. It it just changed my mind. It just completely changed my mind. And the I watched that transition happen, and I watched the effects of war actually eat him up, and then I watched the transition home and that struggle as well. And it just changed my mind. And um, you know, when I learned about Folds of Honor, and I started realizing, wow, this mission is so great, and this organization operates on 91 cents to the dollar going directly towards these scholarships.
Wow.
I did some research, and I'm like, okay, well, this is a very, very awesome organization. They're doing great things. Since 2007, when they were founded, they've raised almost $300 million in these educational grants, like,
Wow.
you know, to families just like mine. And it's I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And other than boots on the ground, it's like this is how I'm serving now. And that's actually genuinely how I feel.
Wow. So you in Nevada, you looking around like, hold on, it's no chap, ain't no matter. I'm gonna launch it. What drove you to that mission to like, you know what? I'm gonna be the chapter to start it here in Nevada. I'm gonna be the one. Me.
Yeah. So my mom and I, after we, we learned about the scholarship program, and I obviously I
Right.
got the scholarship to go to school. When I graduated, and my mom and I were like, "Hey, we need to do something more." Like we need to do something greater. We need to do something more. At the time, Folds of Honor only had, I want to say, 30 chapters when we established the Nevada chapter, but a lot of the presence was on the East Coast and the Midwest, and there was very minimal presence on the West Coast. So we're like, we're like, man, we're in the heart of Las Vegas. We have Nellis Air
Right.
Force Base right down the street. We are surrounded by patriots. Why don't we start a chapter? And my mom and I just, we reached out to our local network in town, and built up an amazing board of directors, and the most patriot people that we know in the city, and started hosting events. And it started as a golf tournament, then it grew to a poker tournament, then it grew to a formal gala event. Now we're talking about
Nice.
bigger and better events. And actually, this year, last month, we had our first sold out event ever. It was a sold out golf tournament at a nice private country club in town. Um,
Nice.
so it's growing, and we are responsible for the Folds of Honor brand in Las Vegas, and across Nevada. So we're talking about expanding into Reno, and everything else. So this is just the start. It was 3 years ago that we established it, but this is ultimately really just the start.
Wow. So that is that's amazing, man. Cause that's huge to start a chapter in a veteran heavy place, but you say, I'm gonna start it here in Nevada. People don't realize like Nellis it was on the west side of Vegas. I know it's out, is away from the strip. You
Yeah,
can see it, but it's a little drive.
Nellis is Northtown.
Okay, there we go. I knew it's not close to the strip, but you can see it from a distance. So my question is, how did you carry the spirit of your dad, his military service, into your daily work you do today with Fulton?
It's all in light of keeping that legacy alive, and realizing that there was a multiple major sacrifices made through his service. And it's been, I mean, man, it's been what, 9 years, almost 10 years since he's lost his life. And um I feel like as his son, it's my duty to keep that legacy alive. And the big motto for Folds of Honor is honor their sacrifice, educate their legacy. You know, so that's exactly what we're doing. So I talk about my dad every single day. I talk about his stories and his legacy and my experience with him. And um but it's my daily motivation. It's like that's why I'm
Right,
here. Without that story, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. um Let alone having a dream job that I feel like I have, and
right.
purpose and passion. And and I'm lucky enough to be 25 years old, with this opportunity.
Right.
And I feel like I've discovered my passion, I discovered my purpose, I discovered my why. But it's because of him, so that's why I'm here.
And that's great, man. And like, we had a conversation before we started, like for you to pick up the torch and keep moving forward. And I know that dealing with loss can be hard. It is hard. What advice do you give veterans or active duty service members and family members dealing with loss? Because I'm sure that that moment right there, it was like you say, you and your mom, you guys like, she said, "Hey, don't worry, we're gonna figure out." Because you asked her, like, "Am I
Yeah.
still gonna go to school? Am I, what are we gonna do?" She said, "Don't worry, we'll figure it out." So, what is some advice that you can give or share with that you experience that you want to share with others when if they're going through grief and loss?
I mean, I I believe I believe that you need to have strong faith. And, I'm a Christian man, and I believe that, they're in a better place, and
Yeah.
they do move on, and everything happens for a reason. And if you don't have confidence in that and in God's plan, then what else do you have? But it helps reminding yourself of that. And I believe that my dad's a guardian angel, and that he is in a better place, and he's not suffering anymore. He suffered every single day. There's no more pain, there's none of that. And
Right.
that's what I firmly believe is it needs to be faith based to deal with hurt and deal with struggle and deal with sadness and pain and grief. You have to have faith.
It's huge. And I know when Fold On they reached out to you and they want you like, hey, we want you to be part of the team. We want you to take out our the golf portion. You became the golf kind of serious. I don't even know how to say it. Like the golf guru, like 'cause you said that's your dream job, the platform, and you use that for healing and awareness. How has that impacted the people that you reached out to be a part of that portion of the organization?
So golf is a huge pillar for Folds of Honor. The founder, Lieutenant Colonel Dan Rooney, he's also a PGA professional, and
Oh, nice.
he built this organization on the foundation of golf for the love of the game, love of golf.
Wow.
And um, now we're running over 1,000 golf tournaments across the country, all benefiting Folds
Wow.
of Honor. We have a partnership with the PGA Tour. We have PGA Tour pros who are ambassadors for Folds of Honor, wears the logo, has the logo embroidered on their golf bag. Um, but it's a huge deal. And not even to mention that, golf is a huge outlet for a lot of veterans who struggle, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually. It's a release. It's a let go. You get out on the golf course, and there's not many circumstances where you have three of your best buddies and you get 4 hours of them, just nothing but dedicated time to friendly
Right.
competition, and just good spirit, and especially with a good cause at these charity golf tournaments. They have a good cause, and you're out there playing with a purpose, you know so it's funny because when I
Wow.
got this job, I never swung a golf club a day in my life before.
Really? Oh, wow.
And I said, "Man,
Okay.
if I have golf in my title, I should probably learn how to play some freaking golf." So, I became a very quick
Nice.
student of the game. I fell in love with the sport. I fell in love with the game, and it's just all of this tied together. Folds of Honor, golf, working with event organizers, working with Patriots, being on the golf course all the time. It
Wow.
it is the biggest blessing. It is the biggest blessing.
Wow. So you have so people come from East Coast to West Coast, North to South, and they reach out. Do they? So you said so many different tournaments. Now, do you go to each tournament, or what's one story that came across? Like somebody came up to you, like, "Man, this is awesome. This saved my life. Is giving me my identity back." And, you and I shared the story with you. Sometimes when we transition out, if we're disabled veteran and we just lose that sense. I could just talk for me, right? Because I still wanted to serve, right? Even to this day, like they called me up, like, "Hey, let's go." Hopefully, they said I could come back in, right? But I know that I was kind of walking around and I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I get that. Um, when you asked me that, the first story that came to mind was when I was in college, and it was actually before I was, running the West Coast golf operations for Folds of Honor, but it was when I was on their speakers bureau, and
Mm.
um, I was traveling to a golf tournament to tell my dad's story, and the story that I tell, which is ultimately damn near word for word the story that got me my scholarship. That story is a moment in time. And I talk about my experience at my dad's funeral when I was retiring. I didn't retire, but I was giving his service dog at the time to another disabled veteran. His service dog had over
Wow.
$20,000 worth of training to serve veterans, disabled veterans who were struggling. So she had a lot of work left to do. And my role at my dad's funeral was to give his service dog to somebody else. And at my story continues when I was like bombarded with love from all of his airmen, explaining to me how my
Right.
dad was like their mentor and their leader and their savior. And, all these stories began to fill my head about, my father being like a dad to the younger guys. And um
Right.
I honestly was being treated like a celebrity. And, it was interesting because um I never really had a good relationship with him up until his death. He was very mean and angry, and he was just super hard on us. And I became very resentful to him. So my story continues about how I recognized that the man that they knew was somebody different than the man that I knew. And the man that I knew was a result of 7 combat tours, 30 years in service, and it just changed him. And even though he couldn't be the dad that we both wanted him to be, he used to be somebody different. And so my story was that realization of it was actually like a day of discovery of a man, my dad, that I really only ever knew to be rude and insulting and mean and degrading, but became somebody completely different in my mind. And that was a day that I genuinely forgave him. In my heart, I forgave him. I said, I'm going to keep this man's legacy alive every single day. I'm going to work hard in light of him because the man that I knew was not him. That wasn't him. And that's why they have these diagnoses, that's why they have post-traumatic stress. That's why they have traumatic brain injury. It changes you. And people can't
Yeah.
transition back from that. And
Right.
when an individual, a service member is struggling with that, there is aftershocks that affect the family,
Yeah.
and I was feeling the aftershocks. I was feeling the aftershocks of war and, suicide bomber that he came across and the car bomb and everything else. I was feeling those aftershocks through him. But I tie this all together to answer your question. When I told this story in college at a charity golf tournament, I kind of just explained that story, but, in a 5-6 minute version. I just kind of gave you the condensed
Right.
version. I had a There was a disabled veteran who came up to me. He had both his legs blown off. He had 2 prosthetic legs, and he came up to me with tears in his eyes and said, "Because of your story, I'm gonna go home and treat my kids differently now."
It's powerful.
He said that. He said, "Because of your story, I'm gonna go home and treat my kids differently now." And it was in that moment that I realized, man, this is so much greater than myself. This work at Folds of Honor and this story that I'm telling is so much greater than myself because not only did I just affect his life, but I also just affected his kid's life, you know?
One of the things I found when I was, doing my due diligence, one of the things that I wear 2 uniforms, one of remembrance and one of purpose.
So true.
What's the scoop on that, Chris?
Man, 2 uniforms. Um, Remembrance and purpose. I mean, that's like that's exactly what I do. That's exactly how I'm living is I live I remember my dad every single day. I put on the Folds of Honor logo. That folded flag has meaning, We all know what that
Yeah.
folded flag means. That's a token
Yes.
of gratitude for service, for a fallen service
Yes.
member. And
Yes.
when I put on that logo, that's what I remember. And but Folds of Honor it's a brand, it's a brand. They're a business, it's a brand. And that's where the purpose is. And that's how it's translated into my purpose. This is my job. I have a role, I have duties, I have a task, you know. So the remembrance is that folded flag. I know what that folded flag means. I have the folded flag tattooed on me. But the purpose is the business and the organization and the mission that we're working on. But I love that
That
quote.
is wow. What about this one? Patriotism lives in action, not just words.
Yeah. I mean, being patriotic could definitely is definitely a verb. It's like it's all right. Well, you're a patriot. Let's see it. Show me your
Right.
patriotism.
Yeah. Don't tell me, show me.
Yep. Yep. I love that one too.
Show me.
That's
When
good.
we honor one, we empower many.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When we honor one, we empower many. I mean, that's my story. That's
Yeah.
that's that's what I'm doing. I tell my dad's story. I talk about my story, my experience at my dad's funeral, and recognizing that he was someone different than they knew. And now I'm empowering these other, just what I said, that service member, that disabled vet that came up to me and said that to me. I'll remember that for the rest of my life. That gave me the most reassurance to think, man, this is why I do what I do. This is why I need to tell this story. I've been given a platform to share my story that thousands of other people who are in a similar situation don't have. And I speak
Right.
on behalf of thousands of other families, hundreds of other kids that
Yeah.
are in a similar situation that I'm in. And I'm lucky enough to be able to share my story and speak on behalf of them. But if I can, what's the quote? I'm going to butcher this, but it's, if you could touch one life, you've touched a million
Touch
lives.
men. Yep.
Yeah.
Touch many.
So I just touched that man's life, and he's going to go affect, that's going to change his kid's life. And in
Right.
turn, that just changed my life. It's amazing. It's amazing how that works.
Another thing that was said, from flag folding to fundraising, it's all sacred.
I love that. I love that. Yep. It 100% is, from flag folding to fundraising. Yep. It is all sacred. I mean, there's so much power and meaning in that folded American flag. Um, that it's such a special brand. It's to me, it's like you know, we have our brand standards is, you don't put this logo on top of another American flag. This is a standalone logo. You
Right.
leave this logo how it is. That's the folded American flag. You don't disrespect this logo. You don't change the color. You don't alter it in any way, um, because it has meaning. And there's families behind that folded flag. There's sacrifice behind that folded flag. There's years and years of service behind that folded flag. There's broken hearts. There's children without parents. There's wives without their husbands. You know,
Yeah.
that's a good one.
Carry the load isn't a slogan, it's lifestyle.
Yeah. Carry load is a slogan. Yep. Same. It's all the same deal. I mean, there's weight. There's weight in that folded flag. You know, every fold has a meaning. 13 folds of that
Yes.
flag. Every fold has an individual meaning. Um, there's weight. There's weight to that.
So now we coming to the top. One of my main asks and questions, how can they get in touch with you? How can they get a hold of Folds of Honor? Or what can they do to contribute to the mission? Because what you're doing now, it's you're actually carving a path to me that didn't exist. Right? You said you're in your 20s, my guy. This is something like somebody, around my age, like, how I'm gonna be, I'm gonna lead them, I'm gonna do this for, because that's stressful in itself. Like when I'm doing podcasts like this, I get sure I already told you I stutter, I do all this, I'm nervous, I'm drinking water. But you out here, you speaking in front of thousands of people, you hosting these events, you getting sponsors, you moving around, you making sure everybody's taken care of, and you're Chris, and you're still Chris, right? Like is I call it two different Chris, right? You're Chris, the young guy in his 20s, still want to do things, but you're Chris leading the charge for Falls of Honor. I call it the golf division, right? Like this
Yeah,
is
that's exactly it.
so how can they get in touch with you? How can they reach out? How can they be a part of the Folds of Honor? Like,
So there is so many ways to get involved with Folds of Honor. As a volunteer, you can reach out to your local chapter. And if you're looking to get involved in any type of their chapter events, we have over 50 chapters now across the country. A lot of them are statewide chapters, citywide chapters, but find out where your local Folds of Honor chapter is, reach out to them, say you'd like to volunteer, you want to get involved, you want to help out. And on a national standpoint, we, if you're a golfer, come and play golf. Come join a Folds of Honor golf tournament. Come do a Folds of Honor golf marathon. We have 1,000 of them across the country every single year. So you could reach out to golf@foldsofhonor.org if you are if you're just wanting to play golf, be host an event, or be a part of it somehow, some way. Reach out. Someone in your local area will get a hold of you. We pride ourselves on great communication, and you'll see that. It's just email golf@foldsofhonor.org. Just tell us your city, and we'll connect with you.
This is how being part of the military's VET campaign, Chris's team, Folds of Honor, it's our turn to serve. And here on the VET S.O.S podcast, our saying is you do not have to drown in the sea of transition. And Chris, when I say that, a lot of people like, what do you mean? Like, is that just for veterans? Is that no? The transition, you transition in life, you transition from one job to the next, you transition from one state to the next, you're transitioning from one year to the next.
Right.
You don't have to drown in the sea of transition.
I
Grab
love
that
that.
lifeline, reach out to us. Like, we are here. If I don't know, guess what? I'm gonna reach out to Chris. Like, hey Chris, do you know somebody in Vegas and Nevada? Nah, Kings, I don't know, but I know somebody who knows. So give me a second. Let me get their contact information and I'll send it and I'll send them the information. Because that's how we build the network, that's how we build the community, and that's how we keep taking care of each other. And who's each other? The human race. I don't veterans, non-veterans, it doesn't matter. If you're looking for help, looking for assistance, we are here to help.
Yes, sir.
Like, subscribe, share with the family, share with a friend, reach out, call somebody, let somebody know that you're thinking of them. And this is the other thing I say, Chris. I was like, remember I shared my story with you. I showed you the picture.
Yeah.
I remember I said, hey, I used to tell Kings that Kings like, hey man, just make it to tomorrow.
Yeah.
Make
Yep.
it to tomorrow. And I say, people's like, man, why do you say that? I said, because if I make it to tomorrow, tomorrow will never come. Because tomorrow turns into today.
Yep.
So if I make it to tomorrow, guess what? Tomorrow is today.
Yep.
So I got another 24 hours. So hey, make it to tomorrow. So I'm looking into the camera. I'm telling the individual that's having an internal war. Tell yourself to make it to tomorrow. That helped me. That has worked for me. I'm still here.
Yep.
Reach out. We're here for you. We love everybody here. Until next time, take care, everybody. Peace.